Hashtag Trending would like to thank Meter for their support in bringing you this podcast. Meter delivers a complete networking stack, wired, wireless, and cellular in one integrated solution that's built for performance and scale. You can find them at meter.com/HTT. Welcome to Project Synapse, our weekly show where we talk about what's happening in AI, technology, how it's affecting our lives. Marcel Gagné, John Pinard is also here with me. I'm Jim, your host. I put together a theme for this week's show, and I don't know if you guys saw it. I've been out of touch because I've been working on the draft of my next book, but I want to try this to see if I actually get a copyright strike on it. But the theme is, and for people out there, is this is how we're going to tell the age of our audience. Yeah.
I'm gonna say that they're gonna have to use their imagination to figure that one out because of your
really.
rendition.
Oh, it
the good, the bad, and the ugly. Right away.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah. Only I reversed.
I want to know
order,
which one of us is which one's the good, which one's the bad, and
I'm obviously the good.
I'll take the ugly. So that makes you the bad, Jim.
You two can duke it out for the others.
Yeah, there you go. And this is how we can test the age of our audience to see who complains that you guys always talk about stuff. I have no idea what you're talking about. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the reason I put that together is because a lot of stuff happened that I thought was pretty negative, actually. And some really tough things were happening out in the world. And I think that maybe that's just part of the way things are going in the world right now, that you feel that way. So, but I've restructured the conversation, hopefully. So we start with the ugly, the bad, and end with the good. Because at the end of this, there was some really neat stuff that happened last week, and I wanted to talk to you guys about it because I think a lot of stuff happened. So start with the ugliest thing that happened. Elon Musk, this controversy that we thought was just another piece of news, did not go away. The idea, and for those who are wondering what I'm talking about, Grok AI was producing sexually explicit deep fakes. You could take somebody and produce them naked. You could do all that sort of stuff. We all agreed on the show last week, different strokes, different folks, doesn't matter. But the difference was, as Marcel pointed out, this stuff was being posted on X automatically. The second thing was, like, there was no depth to the depravity. They were doing child porn, and that poor lady who got shot in Minneapolis, somebody did a version of her.
Renee Good.
And then,
yes.
Yeah. And then say her name. But then Marcel, I think it was you at the end of the show said, oh, if you thought the stuff you heard about was bad, there was a lot worse. And I think that, that's probably true. You think that, and Elon seems to always skate by this stuff, but then nope, the courage of the Western governance, sorry, it was Indonesia that first banned him, I think. And countries started to ban him and said, I think the first country was Indonesia. The second was Malaysia. And then Europe. The UK came in, started looking at this. Europe moved slowly, but they moved thoroughly. So they were saying, freeze all the records, don't get rid of anything. And they weren't just talking about banning X, they were talking about putting them through yet another investigation. Because when you ask these guys to freeze their records, you're saying, freeze your chats as well, because your Slack and all that, because we're going to read it all. And as I pointed out in one of the shows I did, I don't think anybody who's been in a lawsuit, who's had to turn over their Slack chats, has come out of it well. It's somebody always says something really stupid. So this became a big thing for Elon Musk last week.
Well,
and then
even Canada, I was just going to say, even Canada, I heard, they're not going to ban X into it.
Evan Solomon, who's our AI minister, wussed out. We're not going to do anything about this because we have laws about that. Then you're a cabinet minister. If you're talking to people, know what you're going to do for the law. I'm sorry. I'm waffling on this guy who our AI future is intertwined with. And so anyway, he took a big step forward. And then I think somebody else in the Canadian government said, we're going to look at this legally. So yeah, but we didn't distinguish ourselves with any great pronouncements. And partly because everybody's so nervous about offending Elon and all that.
Well,
that
not
entails.
just offending Elon, but offending our neighbors to the south, where we do, regardless of the fact that we're not getting along the way that we used to get along, they're still right next door. And I think that's a concern. And Elon seems to have made up with the chief.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then how he is viewed and how his platforms are viewed is going to have some effect on the response. Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate just for a second here. The line about we already have laws for these things is actually correct. And often I think that creating more laws or making more pronouncements is the easy way out. And a perfect example of this is hate speech laws in this country. Do you have any idea how many people have actually been found guilty under hate speech laws in Canada? 0. We put these laws in place, okay? And yes, you can be taken to court and do all these other things, but most of the time they don't make it to court. They just wind up being, somebody is being charged with hate speech, blah, 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 and then nothing happens. The fact is, hate speech laws are basically a cover, so to speak, for a group of laws that already exist. We already have anti-harassment laws. We already have laws about libel and all these other sorts of things. These laws already exist on the books. Everything that is covered by hate speech is covered by a number of other laws that exist, laws which apparently aren't being enforced. So our response to not enforcing the laws that already exist is to create another law that says you can't do these things that we already told you can't do. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate here on purpose because the response to X in this case isn't we're going to sit down and write ourselves some new laws. It's no, there are already laws that cover this shit. Why don't you just enforce them?
Okay, but let me double on the depth. Let me do the angel's advocate here and say
we can all be
the problem is when you bring out 200-year-old laws, it often doesn't apply to the circumstances that we have today. And
you're not allowed to slap your horse too hard.
Yeah. No, but
harassment and physically threatening somebody and endangering someone's life are still laws that are relevant today, regardless of how long ago they were written. I know what you're saying. There's still laws that are on the books that are very real and should be enforced under those circumstances. If I've got a group of people out there or some right-wing radio host or something like that who is threatening the life of a public individual or something like that is a threat against someone's life. You don't need to create a new law to go after that person when the law already exists.
To be enforced. And they need to be updated, though. As you said, Marcel, if these are 200-year-old laws, they need to be updated.
Well, Jim said that.
Sorry. Okay. But still, they need to be updated to today's reality.
Exactly. And our legislators just aren't up to that. It's all fine and well to say we have the laws against that control guns or something like that until you can print a gun. It really comes down to the things of we need a balance. One of the things that Elon brought about that I don't think anybody's going to be happy about is he tapped that emotional response. And this is going to be where this thing gets ugly as well. He's got a bunch of legislators. They rushed a piece of legislation into play and there's only one thing worse than old laws, and that's new laws that are badly done. And because for the most part, most people who are in Parliament or in the U.S. Senate and their House of Representatives couldn't find their ass with both hands and a flashlight when it comes to technology. Some of them are so old. No, but I can't say it plainly any other way. They just have no idea and they're busy writing legislation. And normally in a world where things happen, they go through committees, they go through slowly, and laws are considered, and the inadvertent impacts of laws are at least considered, and they do a pretty good job. I think most countries, or North America at least, we're doing a pretty good job. But when you rush stuff through, it gets stupid, and you don't consider some things. And so there's a whole big bill behind this one, the Defiance Act. Even you can spot it when you see the names. The Defiance Act is going to control all of this. So you can now, I guess in the US Act, you can now petition and something has to be taken down in 24 hours. If you identify something has to be taken down. The question is, who do you talk to? You just read this act and you start to say, how are you going to make this work? That's where it gets ugly. And then if you start to do inadvertent things that hold back innovation, I think I've been a big arguer for control in terms of AI and doing it well, but you can make stupid mistakes with legislation that will just hold back innovation. For instance, now, AI providers, it looks like, and under the Defiance Act, I'm not a lawyer, but it looks like under this act, you can actually be held responsible for the actions of the AI. Now, if that's tightly worded, that says one keeps its obscenity out of it, you keep child porn out of it, that sort of stuff, okay, maybe. But you imagine now if what you would be looking at from a corporate lawyer point of view, of advising people saying, you better not give any medical advice at all. I don't think it'll hold back AI just because of the onrush of it. But that law, who knows what that could hold back in terms of innovation.
Yeah, keep in mind as well that we're talking about dealing with companies that have an obscene amount of money at their disposal, not to mention roomfuls of lawyers and so forth. So trying to go at it in a big way is extremely difficult. And maybe the way is to actually deal with some of those cases. You remember I said that 0 people have actually been jailed under Canada's hate speech laws? I did a quick search while we were talking about this, and there are some famous examples where everybody thinks that they were jailed under hate speech. Ernst Zundel, remember that guy, the Holocaust denier dude and so forth? Served 9 months. Everybody thinks he was jailed for hate speech. His convictions were under the false news law, not hate speech. And then the law was struck down as unconstitutional. So he didn't even, that was thrown out. Another one is Thomas Winnicky. And people think he was jailed for hate speech. No, he was jailed for contempt of court and violating court orders. So we've got like these cases where somebody thinks that our hate speech laws actually do something where they actually haven't. These people were actually found. It's by Al Capone for tax evasion, right? It's like you wind up getting them under laws that already exist. The other thing too is I think the biggest response from places like X are that we can put it behind a paywall. You remember last week what happened is the big response was that we'll make it so that the people who are able to access Grok are only the paid subscribers, the image generation on Grok. So now it's, you can still nudify pictures if you want, but only if you pay.
Yeah.
In theory, they could make the argument that to be a paid member, particularly on X, you have to be certified as being a real person. You have to show that you are who you are to get the check mark and, of course, to pay your money as well. And there is a period of about a day and a half during which they check out the information that you've got before they give you the little blue check mark.
Yeah, to make sure you can pay.
Yeah, I was going to say to make sure your checkbook, check
I'm sure they're checking you carefully.
But the point is, in that respect, I suppose you could say that it was, despite the fact that Elon did not respond like a person who actually gave a shit, you could say that we limited the impact by making sure that we could actually track the individuals who are doing these naughty things. So
that one would really work. Anyway, but the point was that just reading the world wrong, because there is a pent-up frustration about AI. And if we tap into that in the wrong way, we could start something that would hold a lot of things back. Or maybe you just believe that we should, if you're one of those people who believe that we should just all go for and ban it all. But again, it's not the big companies that I worry about. It's the smaller ones. It's those people who might be bringing some innovation to market who are looking at it going, now, we can't take the risk of this.
No, for sure.
As much as I hate the US 230, which basically says that if you're a social media company, you're not the same as a news company. You can put anything up there, blame it on the person who posted it. And we could debate that. As much as I don't like that law, because I think it's too cut and dried that in favor of the social media companies makes them have no responsibility. On the other hand, going too much the other way would have meant we wouldn't have social media. Would have been that simple.
There are people who would say that we would be better off if we didn't have social media, just to be clear.
That's the type of response that doesn't always mobs have very rarely made good decisions.
That's the thing too, that this whole issue about a few bad eggs are going to give AI a bad name. And it will get to the point of people going, gee, do I really want to use that? Oh, I don't want to buy that tool because it's AI powered or AI driven or whatever. And yeah, you're right. It's going to hurt a lot of businesses because of the fear that people start to have because of AI.
Yeah, I do the cybersecurity show. There are legitimate reasons why you definitely need controls on AI. Definitely.
Amen.
If nothing else, cybersecurity is one of those areas, and it's not being tackled well. And nobody's going to tackle it until they have to. I pointed it out. I did a show on this. The script I wrote on it was basically to say, if it makes mistakes, people won't buy it. If it's insecure, people will buy it. And so where are you going to put your money? On the mistakes. Where are you going to have some real serious disasters? On the security side. Anyway, let's leave that one because the other piece of this is, and the good news is that no matter what happens, you said Elon and President Trump, through all of this, the U.S. government has now complained to the UK saying, you can't regulate AI. We do it or nobody does it. So now we've got some great political tension there. But of course, now Grok is going to be in the Department of Defense. And
don't you mean the Department of War?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Department
that's right.
of War.
Yeah, after they finished paying for changing all the letterhead and all that.
But Grok is going to be one of the main tools. So the guy who brought us Mecha Hitler will be supplying the AI software for the Department of Defense.
And we saw how well some of the other AI-driven things worked when he first came in.
Oh, yeah. But so anyway, this was the mess of last week, but there was neat stuff that happened too. So I can get this out of a little palate cleanser in here. We'll shift through the bad stuff that happened. And here's another one that came up, story that came up. It was somebody put around a script that removes AI from Windows.
Yeah.
And it's very popular. It has become one of the neat little popular things. It can strip the Copilot out of your Windows application. And the fact that I don't even know if it works that well. I presume it does, but that the fact that it's out there is really saying a lot about the reaction. And it really came home to me when I looked at just one set of stats now. And these were stats that were primarily usage in terms of the chat bot. And they came from a SimilarWeb as a measurement company that really just measures internet traffic. And there are
a lot of those, actually.
Yeah. The market share for Google or Gemini had grown by like 20% and took that mostly from OpenAI that had a big dip from owning almost all of the chatbot market, went down about 20 points. There's still a monolith.
Yeah.
They're
still the leader. Yes.
Then you go down and you find in terms of chatbots where Microsoft is, and their market share is like 1 percentage point. 1.5 yeah.
They're like the Mozilla of AI.
They're under DeepSeek.
And I thought I saw somewhere the other day that said that Microsoft is pulling out some of the funding that it had originally planned for AI so that they're not expanding as far as they were going to. Because I think it has been, and you guys know that we use Microsoft at work. And the reason why we use Copilot is because of the guardrails that are capable within our instance. But I can tell you that I use ChatGPT and Gemini at home more often and then send the information from that to my work computer more often than I actually use Copilot because I find it's a lot more accurate. And it's also a hell of a lot cheaper, by the way. I pay... Just so you guys, we've talked about ChatGPT.
We're going to hear about money.
You hear ChatGPT is $20 a month, and Gemini, I don't know, it's $25 or something. It's $30 Canadian. I pay $42 Canadian per month per user for Copilot.
We know of another big company that has been, let's call it a friendly rivalry for a number of years with Microsoft, and they're called Apple. And Apple had this idea that they were going to create Apple Intelligence. And Apple Intelligence was going to be this safe and secure, walled-off version of a frontier artificial intelligence systems. And we all know how well that turned out. And now they've just signed a deal with Gemini. Yep. Gemini will now be Siri. Siri, or Siri will be powered by Gemini. Take that any way you want. But the fact is, Google is now AI intelligence or Apple intelligence. It's Google that's Apple intelligence. And Microsoft has a huge investment in OpenAI. They should just throw the whole nonsense about a Copilot out the window and just make it all OpenAI.
Exactly.
Because the fact is, what are they going to do? They're either going to continue chasing this ridiculous ball, or they work with OpenAI to strengthen and create a bulwark against Gemini. And honestly, just as a side note, I am in some ways even more into the idea of supporting ChatGPT and OpenAI with a pro subscription a month. I haven't done it. Okay, just to be clear, but I'm even more into the idea now that Gemini is taking that much of the bandwidth out there, because as a guy who has pushed the idea of open source, and we can talk about open source models, I mean, we have talked about open source models, I don't like the idea that there is a winner out there. I don't like that idea at all. There should be choices. There should be competition. And if the only competition, the only hope we've got for serious competition against Gemini's rise and the fact that Gemini is being stuck into absolutely everything that is the internet at the moment, then I might be tempted to side with OpenAI at that point.
I think part of the thing, though, is so it's been 3 years since OpenAI brought ChatGPT out, and everybody and their brothers started to come out with their own chatbots and LLMs and all the rest of it. And I think what we're seeing, or I think anyways, in my opinion, what we're starting to see now is the backrunners are either dropping off or getting bought out or taken over by the bigger guys. And you're going to start to see 3, 4, maybe 5 main players at the table. I mean, you've got OpenAI, you've got Google, you've got Grok, you've got Anthropic. I mean, there's
Meta.
4. And Meta, sorry.
Meta.
Yeah.
But it's
Meta.
even Meta.
Sorry.
I would put Meta at the bottom of those 5.
I
For
would
now.
too, except that they have the
For
biggest
now.
customer in the world. One thing I've learned in this AI process that we've gone through for the past year is whatever prediction I make is probably wrong. And the second thing that I've learned about this, and I'm serious about this, with all good intentions, that the most of the predictions that you think are logical. So every time everybody says, this is just going to happen, I go, not necessarily. Because if you'd asked me last year about this time, whether Google would ever catch up, I would have went,
We all did.
No,
which shows how smart I am. Yeah.
But I think that's what's going to happen is you're going to end up with 5 or 6 big players.
But something,
and they're going to leapfrog within themselves.
Well, one thing you can count on, though, and that is that it takes an enormous amount of capital to do the training until we have a new model for AI. And I believe we will. And we have a new structure that doesn't require all of this upfront capital for training. And I believe we will. And we'll have AIs that are designed by an AI. And I believe we will. Until we have that, you need a lot of money. And far more money. So everybody's going to be an appendage to these. But we've seen this movie before. The big tech players watch the stuff. They don't do R&D anymore. They watch the stuff and they buy it. And this is where I think Microsoft got killed. They treated OpenAI like they did all the rest of this stuff. We're not inventing stuff anymore. We'll wait till something comes up and we'll buy it for far too much money. And so they dumped a pile of money into OpenAI, and then they thought we'll absorb it, make it a product of our own. And that's not going so well. Hence this script, and this is just part of the revolt. A 1% share is just crazy. At least Google, even though Google with Gemini is what? I think they've got a 20-30% share on SimilarWeb, somewhere around there. But don't forget, they're also doing all of search. All of the AI for search is running through Google. So it's not like they have a massive amount of traffic. And the little Microsoft with this script. But one piece out of this, and this is why this is the bad part of it. I don't hate Microsoft. I get notes saying, stop picking on Microsoft. I'll stop picking on Microsoft when they start making smart decisions. They do, and they have this week. They did one on data centers in terms of protecting. They were going to come in and they were going to make sure people got actual jobs. They were going to do the things with water that we know Microsoft can do because they've done them before to preserve water, and that they were going to keep people's electrical bills. They were going to pay their fair share so that the other ratepayers didn't pay for the development data centers. They did that. I went, hooray. This part of it, the Copilot, I'm not so sure, but and this is the piece that for you as a security guy, John, people need to know. This script, when you run it to remove your Copilot, it says, oh, by the way, you're going to have to disable your security protection, endpoint response. And I just want to say this in the clearest possible way. If you ever remove anything that says, by the way, your endpoint discovery and response system, or whatever you want to call it, antivirus, whatever you want to call that protection system you have. If you get a piece of software and it says you must disable this, and you do that, first of all, I will not be offended when they fire you if you're on a work computer. And second of all, you deserve what you get. You don't bypass your security protection. It's just dumb.
Yes.
And that's why this came between the ugly and the bad for the story.
Yes. No, I was just back to the talk about the tools and things. I think even some of the players like Apple has come to the conclusion that we can't afford to spend all of this money to create Apple intelligence. So let's find somebody that's where it's working, Gemini, and use it. I think Microsoft tried that with OpenAI, but I think that they've done a poor job of deploying it.
There were big fights between OpenAI and Microsoft. Microsoft wanted the secrets of what OpenAI had so they could take them back to their shop and do what they normally do, build it into their software and walk away.
Yeah, the problem also with Apple is that they have been promising something for so long without delivering anything. It's not even just a question of the cost, because Apple has gone into projects where they've spent billions of dollars and then abandoned the project. They famously spent $10 billion developing self-driving cars and then never produced anything and just walked away from it. So they are capable of doing that, but for whatever reason, they don't have the talent, they don't have the people, or they don't have the will to actually go through with doing this. So I think the decision comes down to less the financial cost of doing this and more the perception that we will never get there. Okay. And that I think
somebody had to have, there had to be a meeting that they had where with everybody in the senior executives and where they sat down and said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to be able to do this. That had to have happened.
I think part of it is related to that there are these up and comers, or even some of these companies you hear where they're hiring these AI guys for incredible salaries. And so I think that I'm guessing companies like Apple have lost some of their key drivers. Like this guy, what was his name? Johnny Ive. But I think that they're losing some of the key players that they needed and that were always there to help to drive things forward. So now they're going, okay, so now we got to regroup and figure out how we're going to do this. They've realized they can't do Apple Intelligence themselves. I actually think good on them for finally realizing that they have to use something else, because that's really something new for Apple. Apple's never been a big player in, we're going to partner with other companies.
The history of this failure will make a great book one day, because something happened that we don't know about. They did lose some high-powered AI people, but everybody's lost them. And as Marcel points out, they've got money. They could light my fireplace with $100 US bills and it wouldn't even, nobody would care. They've got so much cash that this is not the issue. The issue is somehow they couldn't make it work. Now, the other piece, though, that may go down in history, the second book that someone may write that's going to be what happened at Apple is if OpenAI runs into real serious problems, and they've got Johnny Ive, whatever his name is, and they've got the pen, but OpenAI walked away from Apple to develop their own device. That's either going to go down in history. When the book gets written, by AI 2 years from now, that story is going to come out, and it's either going to be one of the best decisions in the world or the worst. And again, the only thing I know about this stuff now is I know that I'm going to be wrong no matter what I predict. But
it'll be like when IBM said, we don't need this disk operating system, we'll short form it DOS, and basically gave it to Bill Gates.
Okay, so you remember a long time ago, because we've been talking here for years and years, but a long time ago, I said something about how people don't actually care about security. They don't actually care about all these things that they claim they care about. And here's another example. Whole Microsoft 360 Copilot thing that everybody is freaking out about and so on. There is an answer, okay? And it's to run Linux on your desktop. Yes, I know. I'm that guy. But to run Linux on your desktop, and then those problems disappear. The same thing with integration with even stuff like Gemini. It's there only if you run it as an external application of some form or another. So there are ways, but here's the thing. People don't want to have to deal with it. It's hard to make those choices. So what you do is you bitch and moan and complain about it, and then you go on using the same thing that you've always been using.
Linux Mint, though, seems to be getting some traction finally. When a Linux comes along that is easy to install, user-friendly, and has the user interface so that you don't have to be the smartest person in the world to use it, it may have some real traction. And I think in Europe right now, they're doing a big study of open source software. You may see a friendlier Linux come out of Europe in the next couple of years. It's very possible. And that would be another disaster for Microsoft.
Linux has actually been friendly for a long time. There's been a graphical desktop for a long time. There are Chromebooks out there, which is basically a Linux desktop, a lower level Linux desktop with less bells and whistles for just the average person to sit down and use it. It's been out there, but that hasn't really, there's inertia out there, okay? And people just get used to using certain things, and they will just take the path of least resistance, namely the path that they've trod 1,000 times. And I know because I've been writing and pushing open source for over 20 years at this point.
Where somebody worries about the little stuff. I did a Linux desktop. It was ages ago, but then, there's sound drivers, and we don't have those in this version of Linux. So you got to spend 12 hours looking around at the internet to make this piece of software work.
So you go with one of the big distros, right?
Yeah. But is there a big distro that really does that effectively? And if there is, then I'm just out of touch, and it's time for me to actually go back and reinstall this. And I've got a spare Mac Air that's old around here. I'll spin it up and put Linux on it and see what happens.
By the way, you do know that there is already a book about, you said somebody's going to write a book about Apple and the whole Apple intelligence and how it all fell apart. That book already exists. I did a search and I found the book. Do you want to see the cover? Yeah, let me show you the cover. Okay.
While you're pulling it up,
Marcel, describe
Marcel,
this for the audio audience, but okay,
Apple
Marcel
Intelligence.
is Apple Intelligence by Marcel Gagne. Oh God. Okay, we're gonna put that one. You have to find a way to put that into a picture with the three of us for this week's picture of the week. That's Apple. Yeah,
I think I can probably do that.
Well done, Marcel.
I wonder. I have to get the draft of the Alyssa sequel done. Otherwise, I'd spend the weekend writing this book with you for using AI. Okay, so the rest of the bad stuff, other bad stuff that happened, and this goes back to this whole thing where we would have had a nice segue if we actually followed a linear thought for a second, but it stayed on this security thing, and that was that there's a new attack for Microsoft Copilot sessions. It happened last week. It's out there. There's been lots of them, but this one just grabbed me, and we did a story about it. It attacked a Copilot session, but Microsoft's really smart. They knew that type of attack was going to happen. So they put in something in their training or in their guardrails that said, if they try this, stop them. Okay. What didn't they think of? This will be Final Jeopardy. Is what didn't they think of? And please put your answer in the form of a question. Do you know what
John,
they didn't think of?
this is yours.
I'm guessing that if somebody was smart enough to figure out a way to hack into Copilot, they figured out that there was guardrails in place and determined a way around them.
And you know what the way around them was? I hope you didn't bet everything. But what how they got around it? They asked again. That was the trick. I'm not kidding you. It was, oh, you can't do that. Oh, could you do this? Yeah. That was this incredibly clever hack. What it points out is that the architecture of security in AI is pathetic. It's based on an old structure. You guys remember the old...
I think somebody has said that before about fears of the lack of security in AI. I don't know who it was.
Well, it's not... but it's the architecture of it. Remember when viruses started to appear, everybody started to say, okay, when we see this virus signature, block it. Right? And we did 10 or 15 or 20 years of keeping ahead of... And then people could write them faster than we could keep up with the signatures. So people said, wait a minute, that's a dumb thing. And we stopped calling it antivirus. We started calling it endpoint response and defense. But we started to think, oh, just watch for anomalies. Watch for things that shouldn't happen. And we made it intelligent. But in all of the development, we still seem to be following this. We'll put a list of things you can't do into AI. And if you try and do with those things, then you're going to have to be clever. Ask for it to do it twice or tell it you're doing a play or writing a book. As long as we have that sort of thing of we're going to put the whole list of things that you can't do, and that's going to be our defense, we all know how pathetic that is. And yet we have this incredible intelligence that, and I said this, was when it came down to errors and hallucinations, people didn't put a list of hallucinations you couldn't do. They worked out how you would use the intelligence of AI to protect itself. We're not doing that in security.
And we absolutely should. What we need to do is not say, if you see this, then say no. Whereas it should be something more along the lines of, a user may come to you with a variety of these things. Please analyze these things. If this is, consider the bad. In other words, how they've got the response, which is the thinking response and the fast response and the slow response and so forth. All of them should use something along the lines of what OpenAI is doing. Is Gemini doing that? Where you've got the base model that answers, and if required, it will think longer about whether or not it should be doing something like that. So when that subject is brought up, instead of answering it quickly, saying no, and then they just ask it again and answer it quickly. When that type of question comes up, and I'm saying that type of question, you use the intelligence to say, okay, right off the bat, this smells off. And I'm going to use the extended thinking or the higher level thinking to decide whether or not I should go ahead with doing something like that. So there are ways around that, using the intelligence to do that. But we're still stuck on the idea that we want to use the cheapest possible response in all cases.
Because no one will stop buying it. And this is where I say people won't buy software that's inaccurate, but they will buy software that's insecure.
Yeah. And all you got to do is add more features. Doesn't matter if they're secure or not, but if you've got some cool new features, they'll buy it in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Tie it into your email and tie it into all your documents, all your past history.
Right.
Yeah.
And oops, somebody else can get access to that too. Oh, gee, we didn't think about that.
Unless, of course, you're willing to pay $200 a month, at which point we will protect you.
But this brings us to some of the good stuff that's happening. And I hope you guys have something more as well. But I thought Anthropic had the week from heaven last week. They were just like, they'd step up to the plate and knock it out of the park. And they don't get the same news that OpenAI does. But first of all, and you've talked about this, Marcel, is it 4.5, Claude 4.5? Was that the one?
Yeah, 4.5 Opus. It's 4.5, but there's Sonnet and Opus, and Opus is like the top tier model.
Everybody's raving about it from a coding perspective, right?
Yes.
So that was one thing that came up. The second thing that came up was co-work.
Yes.
And it is the antithesis of how Microsoft has attacked this. You can argue whether they're the leader, whether they're whatever in coding, but they're really good. And it's Dario Amodei, his sister, the president. I can't remember her first name, but she came out and reinforced the announcement he'd made. 90% of the code they're creating is being created with Claude. So they're AI generating 90% of their code. Smart people haven't laid anybody off. they've taken those smart engineers and they're using that 10% of the code and that control, and they're leveraging them. The people who are working in coding at Anthropic are the top of the line. They've got top talent. They've been turning this into this coding engine. And then they said, and this is where Dario's sister comes in, why don't we generate this cowork product? And we'll do it. They did it in 2 weeks using their own software to build it. And it's really cool.
Using Claude.
Yeah. So you install it on your PC and you use it. You talk to it just like a user and you say, that file, I'd like to do this. And the interface for it as described, because I haven't used it yet, but the interface for it as described is going to be, I think, one of the smart things. You won't go looking around for things. You'll ask it to go do things. This is why I love Claude now. It still is the best for taking instructions.
Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
No, I'm just saying it, of all of the AIs, it has always been the best for taking an instruction, coming back with what you wanted.
Cowork, the reason most of us haven't seen it or aren't seeing it at the moment is because you have to be at the very least $100 US a month plan to be able to access it. And it's a quasi-graphical interface to Claude Code. So it's not like it's brilliantly or amazingly different. It's just a slightly friendlier wrapper on code. Okay. So there is that. But if you want access to it, you're going to have to pony up the money right now.
Yeah. But for instance, even on the rest of Anthropic's Claude series, one of the things for my book is I've said I'm not going to proofread it this time. What a stupid thing that was to do. I made a lot of mistakes, and then a couple people proofread it and they did much better than I did. There were still mistakes that went into production. When an AI has to be able to proofread this, and including the dumb stuff that authors really love to do. I'm writing all the book. I'm writing everything, but I don't want to go back and figure out the punctuation, where the quotation marks go and whether you use a comma this time or a period or whatever. I just forget that. And so I ran it through Gemini. Not so good. Missed a lot of stuff, and it stopped at places I couldn't figure it out. Tried OpenAI, better response, and I went back to Claude because I finally ended up using Claude for proofreading my last book, finally. And I ran the first chapter through. Brilliant. Just easy.
I have to say
so
that
there
I
is
like sorry, just quickly. I like Claude. I like Anthropic. I guess when I think of Anthropic, I always think of slow and steady wins the race, right? You don't often hear these big news stories like you get out of Gemini or OpenAI, but they always come out with really valuable, interesting, and well thought out designs and implementations. That's why they are doing so well from a coding standpoint. They've come out with these things like Cowork, Perplexity, and all of these other tools. I think, like I was saying earlier, you're going to end up with a short list of players that are going to stick around. And Anthropic, to me, is definitely one of them, because they do it the closest to what I would classify as right out of any of them.
You two are still using Comet, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you two are still using the Comet browser. I find that fascinating because do both of you also pay for Claude?
No, I don't pay for Claude anymore because the free one has been everything I needed.
Yeah, I do. I find that interesting because to me, Comet has not come through for me. I don't particularly think that it's that brilliant or that exciting. And I tried the pro subscription because you guys recommended it, and I tried it, and I went about another, and I had paid for it in the past. I once paid for a whole year ahead of time for Perplexity. And now it's kind of like Perplexity, John, you think it's going to be one of the ones that hangs around. I'm not 100% sure because I just can't get all that excited about it. Now, Claude has an extension. We talked about Cowork. There's a Chrome extension for Claude that you can use right now, which does all those wonderful things that you talk about with the Perplexity browser, with the Comet browser. If I click on that little Claude icon sitting up in my toolbar up there, it's funny, I'm pointing at my computer screen as though you guys can actually see it. It will actually open up a side window in exactly the way that it does in Comet, and it will take over my desktop. And I've compared it and done the same thing on both, and Claude does a much better job, for me anyway, with what I've seen with the Chrome extension. Now, and in a way, that's an already in-browser version of what Cowork is looking to offer. So they're starting to sneak into the various ecosystems as well, in the same way that Gemini or ChatGPT does.
I've paid for Claude and then dropped it because I wasn't using it enough, and I'll go back to paying for it again if I start to use it heavily again. I think Perplexity has a different usage, though, and it's really good for checking stuff. I haven't found anything else that's that good for checking facts. And that's what I keep it for almost exclusively. If I'm checking a news story, I'll say, check this story, just because I've read it and I have I do fairly well. I'm really terrible at spelling and grammar from my own writing, but news facts I'm pretty good at. So if I read a story once, chances are I can spot something that I've written that's wrong, or if I've had another writer writing on it, then I can spot that. Miss dumb stuff, and I'll run it through Perplexity and say, fact check this for me. It does a really good job. That's almost exclusively what I use it for now.
Yes.
But I'm going to go back. I'll try Claude again because I will. And I know like I said, if I'm working with it on proofing particularly, it's really great. The other, and maybe you just move around. We talked about this before, having a couple models. You hit stubborn spots with models, and I don't know why. Like the other day I was working with something with ChatGPT, and it just became so stupid on me. And it wouldn't change. I was trying to get it to move a picture around, wouldn't do it. It just one of those times where you give it an instruction and it refuses and it gives you the same stuff back. And I've had that happen with both ChatGPT and with Gemini. And the only thing you can do when that happens is walk away and use something else. Because I don't know what happens to them. But
that is actually a plus, the fact that you can walk away and use something else.
Oh, yeah.
I've been using Anti-Gravity, which is the coding engine, like for some of my consulting work that I do. I've been using Anti-Gravity to build specific tools for the client. And it has the Gemini models obviously integrated into it, but it also has Claude integrated into it, which I find fascinating.
Oh,
It doesn't have ChatGPT, but it has Claude, and it gives you access to the Opus model as well as the Sonnet model. Interestingly enough, it also has the one OpenAI thing that it has is the GPT-OSS model, the 120 billion parameter model. What is fascinating about that is you can switch from one model to the other without ever leaving the agent that you're coding with. You just say, I'm not getting the answer here, and you just click the next model, and it goes on and it does it with a different model. And you can do that like back and forth. So I quasi see a future like that, where you've got multiple, not everybody, obviously, people who are heavy into this or who work with these sorts of things, you have access to multiple models and you can just shift. It becomes a seamless sort of thing. I've got a workflow that's going on here. I'm not getting the answer I need here. Why don't you check this out for me without having to cut and paste from one model to another? By the way, just to give you a quick idea of what the Claude Chrome extension looks like, I did a quick screenshot of us, and I'm sorry, Jim, you were like off to the side.
But I was going to say, you're the only one with your eyes open, Marcel.
But sorry about that, dudes.
Yeah,
but
just resting my eyes.
It wasn't my fault. It was just what you guys were doing at the time when I took it. But if you take a look at that screenshot, you'll see what it looks like. And it does look an awful lot like a comet, doesn't it? Like, can you see that in the Discord? Should I show it for anybody who's watching? Yeah. So let me go back onto the Discord here, and I'm going to share this image up here. Okay,
that's flattering. Oh my God.
I know, isn't it, Jim?
Yeah.
Would you like me to take a different picture?
Yeah, I really would, but
you can cut this out.
No, it's okay. It's not the first time I've been looking goofy, but yeah.
Anyway, but you see what I'm saying? It has that same sort of feel to it. And it does the same sort of job, and you can use it using the Claude models if you really do feel like it's superior, either in terms of coding or in terms of being just a helper on the side there.
So 2 more good stories out of this. There was a great week for Claude. The other one that was really cool and on security, and this is what I meant by you can do things better if you set your mind to it. The guy who invented Signal came out and has put together a new security structure for AI that will like Signal, make it simple to make sure that everything you have stays encrypted in transit and, I assume, on the AI itself. And this could be, we all talk about the things where only, the big companies are developing all this stuff. This could be a piece of innovation that could be bigger than Signal itself. It's really, it really gets frightening when you think about the fact that OpenAI was told to preserve all of its conversations. And there's a new thing coming out with Google Personality, or I think it's called Personality, that's going to be coming out of it's in the US in beta now. It's going to be coming here, where it will remember everything about you. So these AIs will have your conversations. That struck a bell with me, because who thought about that? How many generations of conversations does OpenAI have on me or anybody else? And I don't really care what I talk about with it, but can you imagine all of the things that some people talk about with their AI? And now that stuff could be taken by a court, which meant that, and the first thing that went in my head was, oh, they have it all. And so we're putting ourselves, John, corporate security officer there, and our company information into these things, regardless of what anybody says about whether we're doing it or not. We are. And it's all sitting there, and they're so easily hackable. We've been through that. So this thing from Signal is just really incredible. A really good encryption, easy to use. And if it's as easy to use as Signal is, then I'd buy stock in that. I'm sorry, we can't advise you, because we go into the United States on what to buy and what not to do. We're not investment advisors, but my God, I'm thinking like, I'd buy that.
People say that just as I'd buy stock in that. Don't actually really mean that. It's like saying, it's like being at an intersection and saying, you kill that guy. No, you're not going to, but you say things like that. They don't actually really mean anything. And the same thing on the buying stock. So just so people know, we're not really telling you to go out and buy stock. This is just the way that people express themselves. I'm sorry that I actually had to point that out.
This is one of the things that concerns me. You talk about OpenAI, and I'm sure the other ones are all the same too, that they have to keep all of this information. Wait until somebody hacks their system and gets in and gets all of that information. They talk about bank records and things like that, and they've got 15 billion login credentials. Get somebody's OpenAI chats and start threatening people of sharing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Can I scare all of you, like really scare all of you? How many?
Please do.
We all use social media. The fact is, your entire life is already public. It's already available on the internet. If somebody wants to scrape that stuff, it's out there. Okay. So we're concerned about this, but we're really not. Again, I'm back to this. Nobody really cares about security. They say they do, but they don't actually care. You care about your privacy. Oh yes, my privacy is front and center. You'll have to give up these sorts of things to protect your privacy. I don't actually want to give anything up. OpenAI, you guys pay for a ChatGPT subscription, right? I think you do. I think everybody does.
Yep.
Ask ChatGPT what you were talking about 2 months ago on that date of the month. Okay. ChatGPT already remembers that history. So what Google is trying to do at the moment, their persona or whatever they're calling it, the new Google thing, it's exactly the same thing. Now I will remember our past conversations, and I will have access to your past history because you'll let me take a look at your Google Docs, your Google Sheets, your Google Drive, all your email going back however long and so forth. And I'm going to integrate all that into a ball of information. The only thing that's different about ChatGPT at the moment is that ChatGPT doesn't by default have access to your email and your Google Drive, but you can turn that on.
I know.
And give it access. And it's going to have all that. So I share your concerns, John, and I actually share your concern, Jim, quite a bit with the idea that some court somewhere can say, I want to see all of that information, because there's an implicit agreement between me or you or any of us and these providers, which is that they will safeguard our information. And honestly, most of us want the convenience of an agent, of an AI that understands us specifically. It understands our history. It understands our needs. It understands our desires. It understands the plans that we're making and is going to help us with those things precisely because it knows all of that stuff. And that's like a huge responsibility, but it's also something that I think most people want to have and aren't willing to give up just because there might be these other dangers in place.
Yep. And in fairness, I live a fairly boring life online. So I'm quite careful about some things I post. By the way, just so if you're out there and you're hacking me, I lie on everything.
Listen, everything Harry says is a lie. And then Harry Mudd turns to the android and says, I am lying. Old Star Trek reference from the episode I Mudd in the original series.
My dog, Ivan, and I don't know about the rest of you. I use like services like Incogni to go remove stuff from brokers, but that's just so I don't get as much junk mail. But the reality is you can't worry about your general life because that battle got lost. But you should still be protecting. But yeah, you have no privacy about your life. It's like living in a small town. But that doesn't mean they need to have your bank account. And that doesn't mean they have to have your financial details.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, when you get to AI, I don't know if I communicate on Facebook whether or not I'm having an emotional crisis. People will talk to an AI like they would talk to a therapist.
Yes, they will.
It's why you never give your girlfriend access to your Facebook. You've been looking at this? Anyway, just another story. So the other thing that happened where I think we really started to cross over a line, and this again, this idea that you can't take the same models that we have and really get to consciousness. And we talked about this being OpenAI, not OpenAI, Anthropic's had talked about Anthropic's president. Oh, I wish I can't remember this lady's name. It's Dario's sister. And she talked about the fact that we might already have gotten to AGI in a number of areas. And that came through that we talked about last week. But then I was reading this thing about Grok, and Grok solved a theorem. And a quite well-known mathematician was working this and used it to solve a theorem. And I went back, it's called the Bellman function. And I went back through the math. Now, dusting off my high school and first year university math and trying, because this isn't A plus B, this was serious stuff, functions and all kinds of things. And I went, if it can reason its way through this, please don't tell me it's just predicting the next word. I don't believe it. And the reason why the Bellman theory was there, the theorems that they were using, is these haven't been published. So they tested this out on a series of theorems that hadn't been published and checked quite extensively for them. And then they started to test Grok on some of these theorems, and it was solving them. And I don't believe that's essential to Grok. I think you can find that through the other models as well. But it means that there's more going on than we know. Even with these current models that we think are maybe limited or may have hit their limits. They may not have hit their limits yet. So this stochastic parrot image may be breaking down. I'm not saying
it should have broken down a long time ago, quite frankly. I've been whining about that for ages now. It's not just a next word predictor, regardless of whether you want to hang on to that idea. And I think people want to hang on to that idea because it ensures rather that we're special, that our ability to form thoughts and to work through ideas and so forth is somehow so special and so amazing that it couldn't possibly ever be reproduced in any other form of intelligence other than us humans. I think it's conceit. That's the reason that we keep that line going, the stochastic parrot thing.
Yeah, but it really does point out that we haven't reached the limits of these models. I personally believe that we will, and we will have another type of model that will evolve. And I believe that'll be created by these AI models. Yeah. And I need to believe that because I wrote it into my science fiction.
Well, it's already happening right now. Like human beings don't rely entirely on what's in the gray matter upstairs. The processing that we do to have a conversation, like for instance, when we're having a conversation like this, you don't actually think about all the words you're going to say before you say them. They just come out as you go along. So something is happening there in terms of generation inside your brain. And when we get to a point where we don't know something, or we're looking for another point of view, I would ask you, Jim, or I would ask you, John, or I would go and I would pick up a book, or I would open up Chat GPT, or if I needed to tighten a bolt that was coming loose on a piece of equipment that I've got downstairs, I'm going to go and get a wrench. We use not just other intelligences, but other tools as well to fill in all the things that just thinking doesn't do for us. And I think we're already doing that with some of these models. And again, I like to think of these things as not just artificial intelligence, but synthetic intelligence. And I think that we're already well beyond the LLM aspect of things. It's not just large language models. It's what tools can we connect to? And we do this through things like MCPs, for instance. And we do this through tool calling of various types. I don't have that information. And that's right now, all of the models, except for some of the local models that you'll run, can go out to the internet and search and find information for you and distill that information and bring it back. That was the attraction of perplexity in the beginning. We're already past that point. We're not going to hit the limits of models because we haven't hit the limits of what human beings can do by virtue of the fact that we keep creating better tools or accessing better tools. And I think that's what synthetic intelligence is doing right now. It's accessing other tools outside of its own internal brain, if you will.
Do you remember the explosion of AI and everybody had to have NVIDIA chips because that was how you ran AI? And then they blocked them from being sold in China, thinking, that's going to prevent China from doing any of this. And then they came out with DeepSeek with using their own chips and all the rest of it because they figured out a different way to do it other than using NVIDIA. I don't see any of this being any different than that all of it is going to evolve. The equipment that's required to run it is going to evolve. The way that they're going to power it is going to evolve. The tools themselves are going to evolve. You talked about that the LLMs they're going to come out with something else. I have absolutely no doubt that's going to happen. It's just a question of when and what's it going to look like.
Yeah. And they're going to be creative about it. By the way, they stole a lot of those NVIDIA chips. They had some to develop. It did run on CPUs and not GPUs, but they did it very cleverly. They bought cloud services from another company.
Yeah.
Why not?
Or did something simple like
GPUs.
that. But the creativity of people, and this goes back to it. My red-green fetish will come out because I'm going to call this the 3 words that men can't say.
Let me go get my duct tape.
Yeah, no, the 3 words that men can't say. You were right. You were right.
If they can't find you handsome, at least let them find you useful.
Yeah. No, but you were right, Marcel. And you've been saying this for some time, is that these models are bigger than we think. And that there's a lot more happening than we think about. Or as I think my favorite line from Shakespeare is, there are more things, Horatio, than are thought of in your philosophy. And in my book, somebody said, what does that mean? He says, we haven't got a damn idea what we're doing.
What light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. Sorry.
For it is Grok who has come to steal all of your thoughts. Live long and prosper.
And that's our show. Once again, we'd like to thank Meter for their support in bringing you this podcast. Meter delivers full-stack networking infrastructure, wired, wireless, and cellular to leading enterprises. Working with their partners, Meter designs, deploys, and manages everything required to get performant, reliable, and secure connectivity in a space. They design the hardware, the firmware, build the software, manage deployments, and even run support. It's a single integrated solution that scales from branch offices, warehouses, and large campuses all the way to data centers. Book a demo at meter.com/HTT. That's METER.com/HTT.